sure this is going to work. Try again. We're still waiting for Jose and Susanna, though, right?
Hello, everybody.
Hello, buddy.
Hi, Sammy.
I don't have snacks, Jonathan, but I got soda. You want soda? I'll have glass.
That's a good one.
Oh, yeah.
We're officially live.
Reynolds definitely has snacks.
That's why the camera's on. I was trying to eat quick. I was like, oh, that's started.
That's funny. I'm waiting for Jose and Susanna started. Hello, everyone. All four of you who are watching. Guys, these questions are not loading. This is not our day. Oh, there it is. Finally. Okay. So, okay. Before, let me go ahead and play the intro, and that was supposed to do in the first place. All right. Okay. Was I the only one who know about echoing? Okay. Was it that me who was echoing or somebody else? I need to make sure that doesn't happen again. I don't know how to do that though. Okay, everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. We have 3 questions. So those kids are watching, please say hello if you can hear us. This is the first time we're using this restreaming program, so you're going to see lots of mistakes happening because I haven't figured it out yet. Yes, we are having technical difficulties. I think it takes like a minute for them to hear what we say. So, FYI. Okay, so let's do the first question. And those of you who have questions, go ahead and write them in the chat, and we'll be able to see them. And then we'll get to them as soon as we answer this one. So the first question is, what does the Bible say about depression? What does the Bible say about depression?
Yeah, you were there.
Welcome, Jose. Hello. First question, what does the Bible say about depression? Anybody want to start? I think it would be worth mentioning that the Bible doesn't actually, not that I know of, maybe a newer translation mentions the actual word depression, but there isn't like, it's not like there was a diagnosis of mental depression back then, because, psychologists didn't even exist. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't talk about depression. It just doesn't say the word depression. I hope that makes sense. To start.
I think the more so they lean on towards what they were saying about Sforzo as being doubtful and sad and going through a storm and weathering it, more so what to do in the aspects when you're feeling depressed is what I tend to gather.
Yeah, so it does describe a lot of the things that you feel when you're depressed, a lot of the things that people experience when they're depressed.
Right.
One of the prime examples I can think of is Elijah when he goes into the cave, right? Because he's scared out of his mind because he's going to get killed by someone.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the best examples that I could come up with.
Yeah, I think most of the time they have good examples of it. I mean, Job, you definitely see what a person of depression can be going through. And I think like nowadays, I mean, there's always been the same thing, but now that we understand depression a little bit more, there's different journeys or different reasons for it. I mean, most of the time there is a lack of, obviously, God. So they have a lack of meaning in life, a lack of finding a place of origin of happiness, or even a lack of identity for that matter.
Yeah, Job is a very good example. And I think that it also, go ahead, Jose.
I kind of think like a lot of the people in the Bible, when we talk like as far as like when you think of Old Testament, Joseph, a lot of people in the New Testament, Paul, Peter, these people that went through it, I mean, through situations of life and death situations, as far as like, oh my God, I can't finish my math test, or this girl doesn't like me, or whatever. These guys were like running for their lives, So I think situations vary. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the main principle is, the lenience on the Lord, trust and faith on the Lord, trust and faith in Christ, going back to the roots and foundation of, you got to go through this so that that I'm real, type of situation. So I think when some people they turn off the little switch of the Christianity switch, and then they just go through it, secularly. I think that's when it's just more downhill. In my personal opinion, it just goes more downhill as opposed to just flipping on that switch and saying, "Hey, I got to lean on the Lord." It kind of raises you out of that bubble of feeling depressed. Mm-hmm.
Can we ask a question that I think I think the person who asked this question was probably thinking of this question as well. I'm going to assume that. Is depression a sin?
No.
No,
I don't think it is a sin. I think it's a stir of emotions that everybody goes through.
I think it could be a result of sin.
I think it's a mental.
What did you say, Rafi? I think
it can be a result of sin.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I agree with that. I think that you could get depressed because of something sinful that's going on in your life. Perhaps, you're being you're ashamed of what you've done to the core, to the point where you get depressed. I think it can be a result of sin. But I think that depression itself is a mental illness. It's a mental broken state. And it would be kind of like saying, is it sinful to have cancer?
Mhm.
Right? Like, cancer
Well,
comes as a
yeah.
result of brokenness and sin in the world, but you can't tell someone, hey, you're in sin because you have cancer. That would be really messed up if you did something like that. So in the same sense, you can't you can't tell someone who's depressed that you're in sin because you're depressed. The state of being depressed is not sinful, but it could be a result of sin. It also could just be a biological, that your brain is biologically messed up and not creating the right chemicals, and it's because of that, your brain produces more of the chemical that makes you sad than of the one that makes you happy. It could be a biological thing as well.
Yeah.
For the most part, though, it's usually something spiritual, a spiritual brokenness that's happening because of either an event or sin or something else. Like David, when he was confronted with the sin of what he did, right, because of killing Uriah to keep Bathsheba. His depression was a result of sin for what he did. A well-deserved, I would say. Sometimes it's a well-deserved depression for something we've done that we shouldn't have done. But I don't think that God wants us to stay there either. He doesn't want us to
Let me let me
dwell
piggyback off
in that
you.
state of mind.
Sorry, go ahead. Let me piggyback off you. So like if you were, let's say if you were born into like a single family home, and you get depressed because you don't have a mom or dad, and you're just just living that broken home life. As a result of sin.
I would say it is, but not your sin, like just someone else's sin, which is why it's important that we realize that our sins have consequences to everyone around us. It doesn't just affect us. Sin affects everyone around us, including when, parents split up for whatever reasons. That sin, usually it's because of something sinful. Well, actually, nowadays it could be because you don't do your laundry. I don't know. That's people get divorces for no reasons now.
I
But
mean, should we,
but
should we maybe like define what we're talking about? Because like nowadays I feel like just like everything else where it's overly used, like a person could be sad when they were born and be like, I'm depressed. Like it there's like certain ways of thinking about it, because in that sense, if we're talking about extreme sadness or even sin resulting from other places, I mean, we can argue that Jesus was depressed. I mean, while he was going alone and going and like walking himself and his cross to the crucifixion, I mean, was it depression? I mean, we would need to make sure that we're in the same page about what
the
depression we're talking about. We're
definition.
talking about like the state of like extreme negativity or extreme like just not knowing where to go, or I wouldn't know how to phrase it, but we'd have to agree on which one we're talking about.
Sammy, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I did. I think, well, I've heard in certain churches and in the past in our own church, that they've classified sin as some kind of demon or something, demon possessed. If you have depression, which I strongly disagree with. Um, and like you all mentioned, there's a lot of biblical characters that went through um, depression. And what I wanted to say is that there's definitely a lot of help out there. Don't think that you're alone, or don't have anybody that you can confide in. Um, because a lot of times what will happen is, if you don't talk to somebody about the depression or situation that you may be going through, um, that's where the enemy could, take advantage and cause you to think that you're worthless and, take your life. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, good point. I think I like the point that Rafi made too, where nowadays you have kids getting depressed for absolutely everything, and this definition of depression has become so broad, um, and it almost has lost its meaning. Well, people will even use it as like a joke, right? Oh my gosh, I'm gonna get depressed, or things like that, right? Because become so broad. Like anyone and everyone can be depressed.
That's right.
Not that it's wrong. I'm saying it's more like for little things, like Jose said. Here there are people running for their lives, losing their children, houses. Actually, trying to deal with actual problems in life, and then you have a kid who, his cell phone gets taken away and gets depressed because of that. I mean, no, seriously, like these things are happening for real. um and you're just kind of like, really? Like, I have a co-worker who just mentioned to me that she knows of a child in middle school who committed suicide because they took his phone away. you know um we're building a generation that is not resilient. They're so they're there's nothing wrong with being sensitive, but when you're sensitive to the point where you can't survive something as simple as getting your cell phone taken away, then we're making a mistake on how we're raising our generation. Definitely making a mistake on how we're raising our generation. And I am one of the first ones to say our generations that are coming are not resilient. They're not resilient. It's sad, but it's true. Unfortunately, that's what's happening. And so going back, guys, to what the Bible says about depression. The Bible talks a lot about it. A lot of people went through that. We have Job, we have David, we have Solomon, I think. I can't remember, because he writes um some of the some of those proverbs that are sad, the where he's like in a depressed mode. And then you have Elijah. um you have quite a few, even Paul, and he was in jail, and he's left alone all by himself. But even in the midst of that, he's like, Paul is like, dude, that man is made out of steel. um he was like, yeah, I'm sad, I'm depressed, people left me, but hey, whatever, I gotta, if I'm going to join Jesus in his suffering, then so be it. That was kind of his attitude, and even though he was in that very like dark place, physically, like, and emotionally, he made it out of there. And I think that we have to learn from him and from everybody else who was in that state. And it's okay to be in that state, but you can't stay there. You can't dwell in there for the rest of your life. You got to come out of that. And the only way we can do that is trusting God, trusting the Lord, that yes, he allowed that to happen, but we can trust him through it, through that pain. Job, okay, for those of you listening who are not familiar with Job's story, Job lost all of his animals, all his cattle. So think of your pets, you guys who are obsessed with your pets, and then like your children. He lost his children. He lost what, his house, everything. Okay, in a matter of days. That's kind of crazy. I don't think any of us can say that.
Now, I mean, a depression to me would make sense, would be like some kind of state of despair where like you really don't know where to go. Now, I was just looking up what the Bible actually said, to be honest, because I do not know what the Bible says specifically, or something similar to that. And it does say that God is close to those who are heartbroken. So, I mean, it could be a positive thing in the long term. Of course, it's not something that's great to be in at the moment, but God has used those negative emotions quite a bit in order for somebody to use him as the only alternative to get out of it. Now, depression is much more broad, like Jaleesa said. So my wife wrote down here, Christian therapy and therapy, which of course would be something that would be very, very, very beneficial, that Hispanics don't necessarily believe in most of the time. But being children of a culture or just a main culture in general that divorce happens, bullying happens, more technology means much more knowledge, and with that comes a lot more negative emotions as well. So, I mean, what do you guys think about depression as well as like getting out of it? I mean, I'm sure a lot of our teens think about depression or are in it currently, or just ones that listen. What would we tell them?
Yeah, I wanted to talk if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh,
I think that it's important for us to note that regardless of what it's the reason of why people might be feeling depressed, even if they don't even know if it's actually depression or they're just having a bad day or they're just having a lot of sadness or feeling this in despair, regardless if it's something in your mind, regardless if it's something biological, like that it's happening, regardless if it's a result of sin, or is any even like demon activity or whatever it is, the gospel is sufficient and we have hope in God. The verse of Psalm 50 something that says, "My heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever." So because of how this topic, I believe it's been overused, but also because of how there might be so many different things that might be happening in the lives of the people that are struggling with it, it's important to go and ask for help, and maybe even just asking a teacher, asking somebody that you trust, that it's maybe one of your professors, your teachers here in the team. They will help you because there is hope for every circumstance that might cause you to feel depressed today. So that would be my encouragement. That's probably what I will do if I'm feeling like that. I think that I will just go and find help and say, "Hey, I don't know why I'm feeling this way. I don't even know what's the hope that there is in God, but can you talk to me about this?" And I'm sure that the professors will help you too.
yeah, remember, God didn't make us single humans. We have fellowship for a reason.
Yeah, I think that the worst that somebody could do is to not do anything about it, meaning just going into your room and locking your door and being there. Um, and I'm
Yeah.
not saying that sometimes being in solitude it's always wrong. No, there are moments that I even myself I don't want to talk to anybody. I just want to be by myself for a little bit. But when you start dwelling in that, you are neglecting the opportunity that God has given you of the body of Christ to come alongside with you and walk this journey that will have trials. It will be sometimes it will be hard, but we are here to support one another. And so if maybe somebody's listening, go and ask for help.
Right. That's a good point. I think sometimes we forget the meaning of fellowship because we don't do it very well. um, and I'm guilty. Guilty. I am one of the guilty parties. I'm very much comfortable with teenagers, and I'll commonly known to avoid adults. And uh, when you're an adult, a depressed adult, you can't go to a teenager to talk about it. That's probably not the best idea. So it's important to have people that you can trust, that you can cry to, that you can rely on. And I've always said this: you need to have someone who keeps you accountable, where you can go and cry to them about your depression, but they can call you out about any sin that might be happening in your life that needs to be corrected. And for me, that's my husband. You know, where he's allowed to like tell me how it is, like what's something that I'm doing that I shouldn't be doing, but then he's also going to allow me to just like, you know, ball if I need to. So I think that it's just very important that we have someone like that in our lives. And if you don't have that person in your life, you should definitely, I said this the last time, you need to find someone in your life who can be that for you.
Mhm.
Even if it's just one person, it's better if there's more, but at least one person where you can go to in those moments. And like Jonathan said, sometimes you just want to be alone. When I went through my miscarriages, I remember that was a very dark moment for me. And I remember that it really did help being alone. I was one of those person where I needed a period of time to be alone, but then after that I needed to talk to someone. So it can be both. It can be both where you immediately need to talk to someone, or maybe you just need a moment by yourself first and then you need to go talk to somebody. And it's okay, because we're all different. God designed us differently and we deal with things differently. And plus we're in a broken world, so in a perfect world we would know exactly what we're supposed to do in those moments, but we don't. So everyone deals with it differently, but I definitely think that it's important not to stay alone the whole time. You kind of just need to come out of that at some point and talk to someone.
And understand, as teenagers, you guys don't know your limitations yet. So it's okay to be sensitive, but there is something to be said about having some mind strength, right? Understand the difference between sad and depression. Depression is like extreme despair, where you really don't know the answer. Sometimes you know the answer and you just don't want to accept it. That's very different from being depressed, right? Sometimes you can be sad, and the more, obviously you go through an emotion, the more you learn how to deal with it. Just like being angry, just like being any other negative emotion. Just be well aware of yourself. Know your limitations. Know when you say, well, at this point, I don't know what to do. I need somebody else, right? But sometimes it's okay to, again, the negative emotions are not a sin. It's not something to be like scared of. You will be sad in this life. I mean, a lot. It's life, right? So, but it doesn't mean that it, like, every little thing is like, I mean, it's not bad, but you have to build some type of strength. I mean, that's just part of life. But just make sure that when you have that limit, you go to somebody. Somebody, it has to be somebody, because you obviously can't figure it out yourself. And God is there, and when nobody else is, remember that there is fellowship for a reason, right? Sometimes you need the warmth or the love of somebody that can give you good advice. And most of the time, the advice is going to be look for God, but at least you have somebody there to help you out through it. Maybe that has already experienced it and can give you some great advice on it.
Yeah, sometimes we don't know what that looks like. Go look for God. Well, what does that mean exactly, right? Especially as teenagers, if you're not investing time trying to get to know God, reading the Bible and things like that, it's going to be very difficult to know what that looks like. And we don't say that the Bible has all the answers for no reason, guys. The Bible has all the answers for all the things that really matter. And we're not kidding about that. And that includes like the peace and comfort of the Word of God also. But we understand that God is not. God will use people. It's not like God is going to physically embrace you. He's not a physical being himself, but he does use people. Um, that's the whole point again of fellowship. I think it's funny how some people are like, God, please help me. God do this, God do that. And God sends people, but we reject it, right? Because of pride or because of other reasons. It's like, yeah, God will correct me if I'm doing something wrong. And it's like, okay, well, he's going to send people to correct you. If you're doing something wrong, he's not going to come down from the sky and put a sign in front of your face and be like, you're doing something wrong. He's already doing that through the Bible, but since you're not reading it, he's going to send people. He's going to send people to correct you. So it's just very important that we keep those things in mind. So that was a good conversation. Does anyone want to wrap it up before we move on to the next question? Good. Okay. So the next question is how to be a better Christian. How to be a better Christian.
Stop sinning.
Pretty much.
I'll say go to Liberty University.
I second Jonathan's advice. Just go to Liberty University. Go Flames. Yeah, I think that this question begs a question. This question begs another question.
Yeah. Right.
I want you to notice the word better, right? So like the question was how to be a better Christian. The question assumes that there's a worse Christian and that there's a better Christian. What do you guys think about that?
I don't necessarily think there's one better than the other. Um, what I think is it's not that hard being a Christian. What's hard is resisting temptation and sin. That's what makes it hard because the flesh desires, the flesh wants. You know what I mean? Your mind will take you places where you probably shouldn't be, and then influence people who are around you. That also has to play a big factor. So I think if you just go by the biblical mandates, which we all, I hope, since we all are, we all tend to do the right thing, resisting the negative side, that's what's make it like you get itchy fingers and stuff like that, and you start to like veer off. Is what I think.
For
Well,
me,
go ahead, Brandon.
for me, when you do sin and you feel guilty, I guess that feeling is good because you will work on that problem. If you don't feel guilty, you won't be in that better Christian team. You just, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So I think that guilt does help you to work on your problems. I have a list where like I need to work on lying, stop lying. I mean, stop stealing or something like that, or whatever list you have. You know yourself, and God knows you. And if you ask for help, it could happen.
I want to say that I was just thinking right now, like, because I myself was asking that question, like, is there that a worse Christian and a better Christian? Is does that exist? And I think that I, I'm I'm thinking of the earthly reflection that God left on earth, which is marriage, right? Christ and his church. That relationship, and the best thing that reflects that on earth is marriage. And I think that they do exist because think of it like you have the marriages that are good marriages, right? And then you have the marriages that are bad marriages, that are worse marriages than other. I don't think there's a perfect marriage, right? But there are those marriages that are better than others. And I think that what the difference between a better marriage than another is the commitment that we have with each other, right? So I want to think of that as kind of like from a Christian perspective, like how committed are you to Jesus? Um, because I think that that's what's going to matter the most. Because if you're not committed to Jesus, you're not going to care if you sin. You're not going to care if you lie and if you steal. Those things are not going to matter to you because you're not committed to pleasing Jesus. So your life is not going to reflect that. But I think that it's very difficult because do we even call that person then a Christian if they're not committed to Jesus? Do you guys see what I'm saying? What you see, like I'm thinking this as I'm saying it out loud. So I don't have any answers, definite answers, but I'm thinking like, could we say that that person is a Christian if they haven't committed their life to Jesus at that point? I can understand someone who's struggling with a sin, right? Where they're trying to stop, but it keeps happening. But someone who's not even fighting that sin and is just kind of just doing it and it doesn't bother them, I don't think that we can call that person a Christian, at least not by their fruits, right? Because it's not like they're showing any fruits of being a Christian at that point. And I think it's very important to make that distinction because with the teens, the best analogy that I've come up with to use is the person who wants to stay clean but gets dirty anyway because you can't avoid getting dirty, right? And that's why we shower every day because we want to be clean, we want to stay clean, but you sweat, you work, you get dirty, and you get clean. But then there's the person who wants to get dirty and they don't care who gets dirty, and that's a dirty person too, right? But then there's a difference between the dirty person, the person who gets dirty, who wants to be clean, and the person who gets dirty and it doesn't bother them to get dirty, right? That's the best analogy that I always use with the teens. I'm like, that's the thing, we're both dirty, we're both going to get dirty, but one of them wants to stay clean, and that's the Christian, the one who wants to stay clean and does everything in their power. They walk around the puddles, they jump over the mud puddles, they use hand sanitizer every time they can. You know, this is all an analogy, guys. It's not for real. You know, they wash their hands. They want to stay clean, right? They make sure they're staying clean. But then there's the person whom we qualify as you're nasty, you're dirty, who wants to be dirty, doesn't care if they're dirty, and purposely gets dirty. You know, they'll walk all over those puddles and jump on them, and they don't care, right? So I think that that's where it's difficult, because what if there's a person who does kind of care about being clean, but is okay with getting a little dirty, you know? And then what do we do with that, you know? And this is why it's important that we understand that we can only see the fruits. So we can only see the fruits that the Bible talks about. You know, you can say you're a Christian if you want, but if I don't see fruits, I'm sorry, I can't put you under the, you know, if I don't see any apples in a tree, I can't say 100% sure that, you know, that I'm 100% sure that it's an apple tree, right? So it's like, I need to see fruits. You can't just tell me you're a Christian. So how to be a better Christian? Keep following Jesus. You know, be more like him. Are we ever going to perfectly be like him? Absolutely not. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't stop trying. You know, that doesn't mean that you should stop trying to be like him. Just like, whatever, it doesn't matter. You know, don't be that person. The only way that you can define better Christian in Christianity is who looks more like Jesus. And I think that's where we can compare it to the marriage analogy, where which marriage reflects Christ and his church the best. That's going to be a better marriage than those who don't reflect Christ and the church well. In the same sense, if you're not reflecting Christ well, if you're not representing Christ well, if you don't look anything like him, I don't think that you can even call yourself a Christian. And if you want to be a better Christian, then you need to look more like him, which means reading more about him, getting to know him better. Who is he? What does he do? What does he want me to do? That's the only way I think that we can be better Christians. And of course, with that, then comes everything else, right? We sin less, we serve more, we care about others more than ourselves, et cetera, all those things that come with being more like Jesus. But sometimes we try to accomplish the other things and forget about Jesus, and it doesn't work that way. So that's just my thought process of that.
Now, I remember when I was a teenager. I mean, as a teenager, you struggle with a lot of things because you don't know anything. Yeah, you know, you want to try everything. You know what I mean? So, as a Christian, as a teenager, I know it must be difficult. I take it in the sense of, like, I think about it as someone who doesn't know anything, is a Christian now. What do I do from here? I'm accepted Christ. I am now technically, you would say, like, in my head when I was a teenager, I was like, okay, now I'm technically a Christian. What do I do now, right? And I think Jordan Peterson opened up my eyes a lot of things where it was like, you know, as a Christian, you start doing things differently. You change your environment, you change the people associated with you, you change all these things, and then we always procrastinate with ourselves because it's the hardest part of being a Christian, right? And I definitely think that there are levels to this. I don't think, like, I wouldn't necessarily say worse and better Christian. I think there are just certain levels to it. There's like, just like a baby, it's a baby, it's still a human, but it's growing up. You know, you're reaching certain levels of maturity, and because of that, Christ requires more of you.
Maybe that's the word, maturity. How to be a more mature Christian. Maybe that's the word. I don't know.
Yeah. That's how I treat it, because it's one of those things where, like, I wouldn't expect you 13-year-olds to, like, mumble or talk like my daughter who's 10 months. You know,
Crawl.
I expect you guys to talk to me clear, pronounce your words. So I feel like God treats the same way. Now, it doesn't mean that the 10-year-old Christian is any better than the baby. It just means that you're doing your job in maturing as a Christian. And and like I said, one of the things that will be your hardest rival is going to be analyzing yourself, like really sitting down, being truthful with yourself. And I think Jordan Peterson makes me think, like, it's just really good. Jordan Peterson is is
Amazing.
a Christian. Actually, I think he might be a Christian now, but you can see the journey he's going through.
Still not.
No,
We're getting there. We're praying for him.
But he tells you, like, one of the deepest things is when you start analyzing yourself and you find the monsters within you, and you actually have to attack them. That's difficult. That's going to be your most difficult part of being a Christian. And whether you're a teenager or an 80-year-old, you're still attacking yourself, because literally your job as a Christian is killing yourself and allowing Christ to live instead. So I wouldn't necessarily say that there's a way of becoming a better Christian. I think you should ask yourself, okay, I've been a Christian for a year now. You should give yourself expectations, and if you don't know, ask, or even look at the Bible. I mean, some people went in it like Paul, like 1,000%, but people that matured a little bit slower. You know, it took time. Moses had a lot of doubts. He did not think that he was going to be able to do things, and God proved to him that he was going to be with him. And that's kind of how I would say becoming a better Christian is just analyzing yourself and analyzing your communication with Christ. How would I say? It's just, I guess, your maturity level. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
And I want to rephrase what Rafi said. He said, killing yourself in the sense, like, again, metaphorically, dying to yourself. You come last, which we don't like to do, because, especially in this world of selfies and me, love yourself, and, self-love and blah, blah, blah. It's so contrary to society, to secular world, that people are like, oh, don't tell me to die to myself. I matter. I'm important. So what we're talking about is your ego, your pride, dying to that. That is hard, guys. That is very difficult. And I really love the point you made, Rafi, that a human being is still a human being, even if they're a baby or an adult. Their value is still important. It's just the maturity is not there. And I think that really does reflect Christianity, because even Paul uses, that a baby Christian should be drinking milk, but then a mature Christian should not be drinking milk, right? He actually uses that analogy in the Bible. So I think that, yes, I think that was the better question. The better question is, how do I become a more mature Christian, right? How do I develop as a Christian better? Because there's only one state of Christianity. You either trust Jesus or you don't. So after trusting Jesus, you become a baby Christian who trusts Jesus, right? And then from there, you're expected to drink milk and crawl and mumble. And then from there, you're maturing and walk. And then you start eating solids, and so on and so forth. So I really love that you brought that up, because that totally escaped me. It was a very good point.
Well, as you were saying, as you get bigger, you eat more and everything. I think that's a perfect analogy as well. Is if you don't know where to begin, you start the Bible. And as you get more of a mature Christian, you need the Bible even more, because your knowledge is growing, but you have to get to the next level, and then the next level, and then you become closer to God, and He'll reveal things to you that you wouldn't have if you hadn't reached the level before. So it's one of those things where you definitely will require more food as you become a more mature Christian. If you still read the Bible 5 minutes as you did 3 years ago when you became a Christian, you're going to be at the same level. You may mature in other aspects, but the Bible is going to be your biggest resource.
And you never reach the elite status. It's a lifetime growth. You never become like, oh, I'm a good Christian now. No, it's a lifetime process. Like, if you can't ever allow yourself to get stuck. So if you know a lot, know more. If you know more, then know even more than that. Knowledge goes hand in hand with wisdom. And actually, this, I was reading about this the other day with my husband, about how knowledge is what helps us love the Lord more, because the more we get to know Him, it's like when you get to know someone better, you love them better because you get to know them better. That's exactly what happens. So it's nothing different than that. So thank you. Anybody else want to add?
Yeah. I also agree with both of you guys. I believe that you either in or out. and there is like no in between. So the question about maturing in Christ, I think that's a better question. One practical advice that maybe I will share with you guys that I've done, especially lately now that I am at Liberty, is very practical. Find wiser people and walk with them. Like, surround yourself with people who are in your eyes better, or are more mature Christians than yourself. Proverbs 13, I think that is what it says. um, walk with a wise and you will become wiser, or you will become wise. And I think that is a very practical thing that we all can do. We already talked in the other question about how fellowship is an important you know gift that God has given us, and he uses us to talk to us, he uses us to walk with us, and to strengthen us. So make sure that you are, again, walking in fellowship, not only when you are in depression, right? But even when you are also with the same goal of sanctification, of this journey, as you are just getting in this ladder, getting better and better until you see Jesus, and then that will be done, right? But until then, look for people that are maybe older than you, or maybe the same age, and you can see fruits of them being a really good Christian, and follow them, imitate the good things, because I promise that if the opposite happens, the opposite will also be true. And that is when you start hanging out with people that are not mature Christians, they are actually not even Christians, then you will be influenced very quickly to become like them.
Good point. Very good point. Yes. Find someone that, get all up in their business. Okay. Get all up in their business. People that are more mature than you as Christians, people that you look up to as Christians, even if they're adults. You as a teenager, even if you as a teenager are then seen as the kid who's hanging out with adults, then so be it. When I was in La Biblia, I remember distinctively that I was only like 13, and I was like desperate to get out of the juveniles because I was just like, I don't want to be here anymore. And I went to discipleship, and I remember meeting people that were more mature than me. And it really helped me as a Christian because I felt challenged to grow and to mature more. Now, granted, I didn't necessarily learn all the right foundational things biblically, but God uses pieces and things to take you, where he wants to. And without those people, I probably would not have taken God seriously. And so I think that it's very important that you realize that you are not going to be able to become a more mature or grow as a Christian if you're hanging out with people who are as mature as you or less. At the very least, I would say that if there's people who are as mature as you should all be seeking to grow somehow. And you need to all agree to go find those people, who those people are going to be. So yes, good point. Thank you. Anybody else want to add anything before we move on to the next question? All right, that was a good conversation. Next question. Why didn't Jesus' ministry last long, and why did he start so late? So that was 2 questions, I think. I think the short answer is I don't know.
That's how God wanted it to be.
I don't know. Why was Jesus' ministry just 3 years long, and why did he start so late? We could speculate, but the Bible doesn't have any answers on that.
Susanna said that's the way the cookie crumbles.
It says that's the way the cookie crumbles.
That's what I would say. I was like, you got me there.
That's kind of like asking when someone you think is good dies, like, oh, why did he die so young? Like, because he died.
Yeah. I mean, but also, isn't that like how God is never late, God is never wrong, God is always on time type of deal? So maybe in the span that he did his things.
Well, yeah, the way I would answer that, if you want an answer, kids, is that was God's plan.
Yeah.
that's how he knew that. That's when he knew Jesus needed to be born. That's when God knew he needed to start his ministry, and that's when he knew that Jesus needed to die. That's the perfect time that Jesus had to be born into. That's the short answer for that. Like, I don't really have another. Does anybody else have a better answer? I mean, I'm welcome
Question
them.
is, why are you late to the game?
The question is, why haven't you started your ministry?
Right.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think that that's just the plan. I do want to say though that I think that it was intentional. Jesus, sometimes he will even ask people to not share everything, when he was starting his ministry because he was not his time yet. I don't know if I can quote him on that. Um, so I do believe that
That's
it
right,
was
when he turned the water into wine.
right. It's like, it's not my time yet.
Ah.
So that means like he was definitely aware of the timing of when that needed to happen. And one good thing that I've learned is that sometimes these type of questions we will not have an answer because God didn't answer them in the Bible, and that it's okay. If we really, really needed to know all of these things, we would probably, have the answer in the Bible. So I think that I will choose to believe that it was the plan of God and that He's in control as the Almighty, powerful God. And I probably wish that He would be, alive until He was 45. If He did, that it's okay.
Yeah.
One thing we can at least take away from it is the fact that he didn't wait until his ministry to be a good Christian, or at least to be a follower of God, or like to acknowledge or educate himself on God. He didn't wait until his ministry. And I remember when I was a teenager, I was like, when I get older, I'll be a better Christian. Because I'll be more mature. I'll want to look for that stuff, but it doesn't come like that. It's you decide what you're going to educate yourself on, and he did. I mean, it talks about when
he grew in knowledge, and that the Bible
so
says.
unless you're going to do that first, you're not just going to suddenly become into your ministry and be like, oh, I have the knowledge in my head randomly. Like it takes time. Don't wait for your ministry to do something about.
And actually, don't wait for your ministry. Period. It's what I would say. Like, I think that what people see, the thing I could say, it's okay to look for your ministry, but the problem is people define ministry as something where you're somehow well known and famous and everybody knows your name. That's what people tend to think of when they think of a ministry. It's like, oh, people know me, and people invite me to churches, and I'm well known, and I have the title of apostle or prophet or things like that, And I find a problem with that, because if we go to the biblical definition of ministry, it's really just to serve.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want ministry, serve. Go clean go clean the church. Go help cook. Go help cut some vegetables. Go be an usher, helping the cameras. I know why you don't want those spots, because nobody's going to know your name there. And see, this is a problem. Sometimes looking for that ministry is not about Jesus. It's about people seeing me. And that's an issue. If you're willing to serve, you should be willing to do it anywhere, even behind the curtain, like helping with lyrics in the church, helping clean I don't know, the instruments. Is that even a thing? Refilling the envelopes in the chairs, helping your brothers take out, if you see them carrying bags and they're heavy, help them. If you see them with children and their car seat is heavy, help them. Serving others is ministry. And sometimes we wait for the titles and the recognition and the being in the front where people can see us in the pulpit. That is not ministry. That's not biblical ministry anyway. That could be. And if God wants you, he'll take you there. But if that's what you're looking for, and to start off with, I'm sorry, you have got the wrong God. That's not how God works. So get that straight before you're trying to get famous. So, okay. Anything else on that? We actually have another question. Someone submitted a fourth question, guys. So, anything else on that?
We don't.
Go ahead, Sammy.
So what I was gonna say is, according to, I think, and you guys can correct me. I think in Jewish culture, don't the men have to be at least 30 years to become a rabbi or something like that? Maybe that's why Jesus waited, until he was 30 to have that authority to, you know, be
It's
a
interesting.
rabbi.
I didn't know
Because
that.
in scripture they do quote him as a rabbi.
I did hear that before,
Hmm.
but I can't either confirm or deny
I,
it.
I heard it. I just sadly I don't remember.
Maybe to reach like a
specific.
certain level of respect with an age.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also I also heard that there was like a prophecy of the 70 weeks in Daniel, I believe, um, and that the celebration when Jesus is entering Jerusalem with on the little donkey, um,
Mhm.
it's like the culmination of that week, and that celebration kind of played part into it as well. Um, that's why like history is interesting. You can go and research
History,
this.
history is important. It is so important for
Yeah.
Christians.
So we were waiting for the donkey.
The right donkey.
The right donkey.
For the right donkey.
I'm
I
sure
don't see
there was more to
anything.
it. I'm sure there was like even the time of year.
There's probably a lot more culture
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I know the numbers are
Okay.
important too. Like 1, 2, 3. 3 has like there was 3 crosses. I know there's a whole lot of more threes, but it's important. We just unfortunately we don't know. I don't know.
Don't.
Yeah.
And what you said before about serving, I think it's a Bible quote that you wanna why you want to gain the world then you lose your soul or something like that.
Hmm. Yeah. True. We're looking out to save the world by becoming famous on the pulpit, and you don't realize you're kind of just getting lost in that narcissistic look at me fame. Um, no bueno.
I was
Um,
Jaleesa, I was gonna say something. I would just tell, all you kids is be careful who you compare yourself to, because just because someone's up at the front doing something and so-called a better Christian or whatever we want to label them as, it does not make them any better than you or somebody that you want to imitate. Because I could be on the stage performing something and then the next day I'm doing something else. So I think it's be cautious. And if you guys do read the Bible and you guys come to the classes and are educating yourself on maybe things that you guys have doubts about, little by little, the maturity is going to start getting there and you guys are going to start staying in that right path instead of straying away or constantly bumping, and getting off track. So I think it's just be cautious on who you want to imitate, because the only person you should be imitating is God.
I would say that if once that person comes off the stage, if they don't have anything to give, do not try to imitate them.
Mhm.
If that once that person gets off the stage, if there are no fruits there, if there's nothing there to imitate, that's
Yeah,
what I
cut it.
gotta say about that.
Yeah.
Um, take them off the list of people you want to imitate. Um, a person who loves Jesus should be the person who loves Jesus off the stage, on the stage, and especially alone. So, you know, people who it's easy to perform.
Yeah.
That's what I got to say about that. It's easy to perform.
So,
All right. Oh, go
okay,
ahead.
never mind, go ahead.
No, go.
I basically not just recently me and Susanna got into like I wouldn't necessarily call it an altercation, but somebody did um point out to me and that basically asked me flat out like, what do you do? Basically saying saying basically that I was just kind of like a bench warmer. And and I had to sit there and like kind of correct them, and I was like, well, brother, here, let's look at my resume type of thing. you know I've done
Got the
multiple things,
receipt.
and I'm nowhere in the scene. You know what I mean? A lot of people, they don't even know my last name, and so as soon as I pointed all these things out, they were kind of just like, oh, oh, okay. So my advice would be like not to worry so much of like because oh this person could be in the band or this person behind the camera or this person's in singing or this person over here he's an usher or something like that. Let me tell you guys something, and I could speak for me and Jonathan because me and Jonathan we did some ushering, and man, let me tell you that if you really want to humble yourself to really get it up, do ushering because man, these people are wow.
I
Yeah,
take my hat off to y'all all the
man,
time
these people
because
are
you
tough,
guys.
and like, the insults you get to your face.
Yeah.
So, but
Plus the
again,
vomit that you have to clean some days, you know?
yeah. And it's like one of those things where it's like as an usher, man, you got to do a lot. You got to hustle. You got to move tables. You got to help out, serve the food, break up the food, seat the people. And people they don't want to be seated, and they want to seat themselves. So you kind of got to make accommodate. Oh man, it was a lot. But regardless, back to the thing. I personally say work on your resume for Jesus. Present to him. This is what I've done in your name for you. This is what I do. I'm not just a guy that sits on the bench. I don't want to be that guy that sits on the bench. I want to do things for Christ because I want to ultimately say and have, Jesus be like, this guy was a good guy. He did a lot of these things in your name. So that's
And
what
I
my
think it
advice.
becomes. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you up.
No,
But
go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I think it also becomes better when we realize that it's important to Jesus that we see our brothers and sisters as deserving more of these things than we do and better than us. And that's hard, okay?
Yeah.
Because we're so naturally want to take care of our own.
Yeah.
But I think that it becomes easier if we realize how important our brothers and sisters are to God and how, the same way that Jesus came to serve, that we are supposed to do the same. It becomes easier when the people start mattering to you. And I say that because that's something I struggled with. There were some, I love to stay busy, but when I started getting busy in church, it wasn't because I liked people. Okay. That wasn't the reason. It was because I needed to stay busy. I am a person who has to stay busy. I'm going to go crazy and nuts if I'm not busy. And then when I started doing it for the right reasons, it became easier to deal with the struggles of, oh my gosh, nobody shows up, nobody wants to do this, nobody wants to do it. It became easier because not easy, but easier. Um, because you realize that that's what God wants you to do, serve others. And if that matters to him, it should matter to me. And those people should matter to me. Even if it's hard for me to grow and get there, I need to make sure that I'm doing it, because it matters. They matter to Christ. So we can do hard things. Last question. What are the best ways to spread the gospel? What are the best ways to spread the gospel?
Social media, for sure, because you guys love social media. So definitely Facebook, Instagram, Snap, wherever, because that's the best. If you're not ashamed to put it on your media, then and if you are afraid to put it on your social media, then you might want to question your faith or say, hey, why am I afraid or shy that someone is not going to like my post, but yet you post other inappropriate stuff, so just the thought.
I have one word for that question, and it's apologetics.
Yep.
Look into it. But Susanna has a great point. If you are ashamed of posting it on your social media, is what I have to say to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with social media, but also be careful because there are some people who are not biblically,
Oh, what you repost. Be careful with what you repost. Yeah, I would agree with that. But that's for everything, guys. Be careful with what you repeat, who you imitate, who you repost.
Yeah.
Oh, that's like with everything. But yeah, apologetics. I would definitely say that I've learned to have great conversations with people who have completely different worldviews through apologetics. It's been the most helpful tool that I've had. It has been the best tool strategically to reach people. Um, and that's the best thing I have to say about that, because it's not like I haven't done other ways before, but they didn't work as well. Now, and I want to be clear, to spread the gospel. Your job is not to convert people. Your job is not to make people believe in Jesus. Your job is just to spread it. Talk to people about it. If people don't trust Jesus in that moment because of you, or if the conversation didn't come up for you to like ask them about, being a trusting Jesus and whatever, that's not your business. The Holy Spirit is going to do the work. Your job is to just spread the gospel. Jesus is good news, the good news of Jesus. You don't please don't make them make a prayer if they don't want to. Don't, like, that's not going to do anything. It's just going to make you feel good, but it's not going to do anything as far as them being saved. Your job is to talk about it. Spreading it is talking about it.
As far as spreading it, I would say that testimonial would be the strongest. And I don't mean by you going up there and be like, hey, this happened to me. I mean, like, just the way you live. I mean, it's testimony of your own self. There's a reason why products constantly interview people to give their testimonies, because people want to see what it will do for them, right? So if you are living, walking testament of what it is to follow Christ, and people see that even though you're going through difficulties, but you still are joyous and you still have Christ, and maybe your life isn't all put together, but there's going to be something supernatural about it. There's going to be more God shining through you. That's going to be the best way of doing it. At least that's my opinion on it. Definitely is going to be the hardest, and definitely not going to be always 100% for what you do. But I mean, it's going to convert people the most because they see you day to day.
There was a man who once said, and I will not say his name, but he would always say, most people will never open a Bible, and you're the closest Bible they'll ever read. Like, your life is the closest Bible they'll ever read. And I think that's very true, because most people won't ever open a Bible. But people will get to see how you live. And the way you live is going to be the best Bible they'll ever read. Especially for atheists and agnostics, or people of other religions, Catholics and Christians, well, people who profess to be Christians, well, but especially other religions and agnostics and atheists, your life is going to be the best Bible reading they're ever going to get. So the way you live is definitely a way to witness of Jesus. You can't go out there in high school and, wear a miniskirt and a crop shirt and say that Jesus loves people. Can't do that. No, that's not going to fly, y'all. You can't, you can't put I don't even know what they're called. What are they called when those things that they roll and put drugs in and weed? You can't be rolling one of those and talking about the gospel at the same time, right? You can't do that. Can't wear your pants below your butt, showing your underwear, and expect people to take you seriously. You can't do that stuff. Nobody takes you seriously. No, you would never take a president seriously if their pants are under their butt and they're, smoking a joint or something. It's just natural, because of what they represent. So you can't be taken seriously if you're just acting like everyone else. If you're just using profanity like everyone else, imitating everyone else, going and making out with people wherever, and dressing like however everyone else is dressing, talking like everyone is however everyone is, and dyeing your hair, and I'm not saying that it's wrong to dye your hair. Okay, I love to dye my hair, just FYI. These are not things that are wrong, but you have to remember that who we represent matters. Again, you won't take a president seriously who, dyes their hair pink and, wears their pants under their butt and has, tattoos on their chest and throwing gang signs, like, and that's a president. Okay. So the same thing, who you represent is much more important than the president of the United States of America.
Mhm.
So keep that in mind. Your life, the way you represent your lifestyle matters. If you say you're a Christian, if you don't represent Christ well, do not say you're a Christian. Please don't say that. Please don't ruin Christianity more than it already is ruined by people who are ruining it. Just don't say anything.
Yeah.
If that's the case. Anybody else want to add to that? Oh, we have a fifth question. Woo! I think that's going to be the last one.
Yeah, very quickly. I think that if you are sitting there and you think I already live like a good testimonial, I everybody knows that I'm not doing those things. Then I encourage you to just speak. Like they were saying, just talk about it. This is my quick tip. All right, when you go to school or where you go anywhere, and somebody asks you how you doing, you got to read the room though. You probably can say that all the time, but just say, "Hey, I'm doing great. God has been great to me today, so I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing?" And then they might be like, "This person is crazy. I don't want to talk about it." But a lot of the times, even people ask me, "Oh, really? How so? Or why?" It's like, let me tell you why the Lord has done this to me. And then they ask me that question, and some other times they're not interested, and that it's okay. Not just because they're not interested or even speaking about God or Jesus and the gospel, like that doesn't mean that it's your fault. People eventually will have to make their own decision, but be open, and it's not. I don't go my days thinking that every single person that I will talk today, because I'm gonna go to Walmart, I must tell them about Jesus. Like that's just unrealistic, right? Like that doesn't happen. But when you have the opportunity, tell them my day. I'm doing good, and this is because this is the reason why I'm doing. I'm doing great today. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Give it a try.
I can imagine that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can imagine Jose be like, "Well, let me show you my resume."
Jose, let me whip it out.
Man keeps his receipts.
Okay, guys, we're going to move on to the last questions because we only have like 14 minutes left. So, can Christians dress up or participate in Halloween things? Oof.
They could dress like a Christian.
Oof. This is going to be a debate. A 15-minute debate, guys. That's all we have. Okay, I'll start just because I probably have the most different view here. Or I don't know. Maybe you guys will agree with me. We'll see. So I thought about this a few years back when I was learning about logic and reasoning and being consistent with my view. And I realized that I celebrate Christmas. And I realized that Christmas used to be a pagan celebration. So I thought to myself, you celebrate Christmas with a completely new meaning from what it used to be celebrated. And you are okay with it. So then I asked myself, what if people celebrate like a harvest or the fall or a new beginning during Halloween time? They're changing a pagan holiday and making it into something good and celebrating something good and changing the meaning of that celebration. Would I, because once upon a time it was all wrong for me, no matter what you did, if you celebrated anything at all, it was all wrong. But I realized that I have brothers and sisters and brothers who celebrate a new harvest during Halloween because they want to take the whole, skeletons, death, evil thing out of it, but they still want to join and celebrate something good. So I realized to myself that if I was not okay with that, then I could not be okay with Christmas either. Because it was turning a pagan holiday into something good. Now, that does not mean that I want to celebrate Halloween with my children, or something else like a new harvest or stuff like that. The reason for that is because I don't want to, I go to a church in a community where they see it as something bad and is sinful. Therefore, I will not participate in that because I don't want to make them fall. Just like Paul told the people, if you have to stop eating meat to make your brothers and sisters not to cause them to fall, then don't do it, in that same sense. And it was actually for a pagan celebration. So this is very appropriate. Paul told them not to do it because the meat they were eating was for pagan celebrations. Even though Paul was like, I know it doesn't mean anything. I know there's nothing wrong with you eating the meat, but don't do it because your brothers and sisters you're causing them to fall because of it. So I won't do it because of my brothers and sisters. And again, there's that piece of making that effort of my brothers and sisters matter. I'm serving them. I love them. So I won't do it. But I'm very careful not to judge my brothers and sisters who go to a church who perhaps celebrate a new harvest and do some kind of good celebration during that time. Whereas I do know of Christians, and once upon a time me, who found all of that wrong and I was very judgmental towards it. And I thought it was sinful and it was bad. And you're not representing Christ well and whatever. And I realized that thought process was wrong because it was not consistent. I don't feel that it's okay to celebrate Halloween in its original meaning. I don't think that's okay. I don't think it's okay to have our kids walking in skeletons and dressing as ghosts or demons and things like that. I think that's celebrating more of the evil things. But I am okay with, say, our brothers and sisters who go to a church where they want to celebrate a new harvest or the fall or whatever during that time. I am okay with that. But me, myself, won't do it. I hope that makes sense. That's my short version of it. I could go way more deep into it, but that's.
I'll chime in on this because, you guys know Isaac and Adrian is 10. Not at any point did they ever go out and dress themselves, and they're perfectly fine. Obviously, we get into the trends of wanting to dress up and candy. And honestly, I worked in the dental field for a long time. Honestly, I find it very awkward. Maybe this is me coming from, Salvador and just not having this holiday. But I find it awkward to send your kids to go to strangers' house to get candy. First of all, I don't know where that candy has been. I don't know if it's expired. And honestly, sometimes some people are nasty and mean and will do stuff to the candy. So I tell myself, why would I want that exposure for my kids? Like, for what? I will say that Isaac did have like a Spider-Man costume, but it wasn't a costume. It was more of like what is that play when the girls wear the little tutus or whatever? But he would wear
play dress or dress play.
So he would do that, but like when he was younger, but it wasn't on Halloween. It would just be on random days that, he wanted to be a superhero or whatever. But my thing is just, I think if you fall into the hype of what Halloween is, and most of the time it strays you away from, doing what's right. Because like you said, a lot of people end up doing the whole demon stuff. And some people like that holiday, and Jose will tell you why, because he has people who have expressed the reason of why they like it. Go ahead. What you always say.
So I had a bunch of coworkers that here's my whole take of it in pretty short words. My kids want candy. You can ask me for candy. I'll buy you candy all day. You don't need to go out and get candy because she already explained that. Mm-hmm. Second thing, Halloween, I don't agree with it because of, the whole demons and goblins and things like that. And here's the other aspect of why I don't agree with it. I feel as if it's an excuse or I don't want to say the word excuse. Julissa, help me out. What is it when somebody is picking the day as an excuse to just be who they really want to be? Does that make sense? I guess. So like I have these coworkers at work where I'm just gonna say it, they're pretty slutty, so they use Halloween to be who they naturally are,
Oh, okay.
and they want to
Yeah,
dress up. They
to
want to
just
dress up like,
justify being
yeah, you know.
inappropriate.
And then they say, "Oh, it's my favorite time of the year," and it's just like, yeah, I can see,
And
you
everybody
know,
else's.
right? You know what I mean? So that's just like, I also think of like these people who think of themselves as little furries or whatnot. They want to go all out and be comfortable in their furry little skins. You know what I mean? A lot of these things. You know, what exactly is Halloween nowadays as opposed to what it was back in the day, or 10, 15 years ago for us. Nowadays people are just using it as a night to just be themselves and wear little horns and all these little things or whatnot. They want to dress up as a girl, or whatever it is nowadays, that boys can dress up as girl costumes can be in boys costumes, just to push the agenda of the alphabet community, all this other stuff and what's going on today in the world. So like Julissa said, we go to a Christian community where it's like it's frowned upon. So I just stay away from it all in total.
So
I will say that I think for me it's more like about Christians, because I feel like people who are not Christians are going to act like people who are not Christians, right? Because they don't have the truth, they're blinded, and this is why they probably will use that day as an excuse to actually dress inappropriately and all these things. But obviously they're only inappropriately from the standard of Christianity, right? From God's standard of what is right and what is wrong. And since they don't have that, they don't care, basically, is the answer to that. But I also would like to ask Susanna. So Susanna, is your stance on Halloween, then is it more of a like it's more like a
practical.
creepy thing, like it's more like a because of the teeth getting rotten and creepy kind of thing, like it's way too weird for you, as opposed to it being just sinful and wrong and something that you think that people will like go to hell for or something like that?
Yeah, I think it's just the representation, because every time I think of Halloween, I think of, maybe something spooky or whatnot. So it makes me just kind of stay away. Like what I was saying, if you want to stay on the right path, if it's gonna make you kind of doubt or maybe make you think of something, I'd rather just stay away from it in general. So that's why I'd rather keep my kids away in general. Like I will say I have participated in a pumpkin patch, but it wasn't on the day of Halloween. It was just literally a hayride and stuff with Adrian when he was younger. And they do give them a little pumpkin for them to do whatever they choose to do with it. That's part of the field trip. But I guess it's the representation that it has, and and what comes along with it. Like I don't want no cavities. I'm good. Like I don't want my kids to have cavities.
Yeah, so like there's a difference between like how you were saying there's a pumpkin patch, like and they're just giving you a pumpkin. You know what I mean? But if you're going on the day, a specific day of Halloween that has a lot of historical background to the date, and then it also is a day of demonic demons, vampires, ghouls, whatever, that you can be somebody of the dead or whatnot that represent. But if you're just doing like a fall festival, like Susanna said, hay rides and things like that, not a big deal, not something to sweat about, And if you do have ever, believe me, guys, if you ever, and you could say it between us, you don't have to tell your parents, if you ever gone on Halloween and you've got some candy with your friends and you didn't do anything bad, you're not going to hell. You're fine. I mean, you're okay. But it's
you
not
might
something
if for disobeying your parents, but not for that actually.
yeah. Okay, so I mean, but if
and they might get cavities.
The cavities.
I'm really gonna say I shouldn't have gone.
But no,
you need to get a toothbrush.
It's not. It's. But if you continue a pattern that, oh yeah, every year I'm going on Halloween, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna dress up as that, and or I'm just gonna go as a ketchup bottle.
No, and honestly, we've had even older kids, like maybe around y'all's age, for the kids listening, and they're not even dressed up. They're like with their clothes. Like seriously, you didn't even make an effort. No, I even I shot my we turn off the lights, and I put a little thing that
no Halloween.
That we don't do Halloween, and typically we're not even home, but the times we have been, I just put my little tag, and that works. But yeah, some of the kids don't make an effort. They just go out and think it's it's the free way of getting just candy. So it's like you didn't even make an effort. Like, don't come knocking. That's how I see it.
I think it's important that this is just one thing I want to say before I let you talk. I think the conscious thing is important, because if it makes your conscious feel like you're sinning, don't do it. And Paul talks about that. Paul talks about not doing things that affect your conscience. So if it's going to affect your conscience and it's going to make you feel as if you're sinning, don't do it. And Paul talks about this in the Bible. It's a conscious thing. Go ahead, Rafi.
So this is a really long topic for me. All right. So originally as a kid, I thought everything that had to do with everything that was scary and Halloween was all demons and devil and blah, blah, blah. Now, this is because of my mother. So that being said, I already was integrated within that kind of mindset. And I know my wife was too. So we come from a culture where we know that stuff, or at least it is usual to think of that stuff as something that is sinful and demonic and blah, blah, blah. Now, that being said, I was a scaredy cat as a kid. As I got older, I liked scary things. So I am particularly fond of scary movies. I kind of like getting scared just because I don't get scared often. So it's like, it's like adrenaline, right? Now, that being said, the reason we don't celebrate Halloween is specifically because of our son and the way he is, not because of anything wrong per se. It's like if you watch his like Kung Fu Panda, there's nothing wrong with Kung Fu Panda, but then he's over here kicking people. So like that's why we don't do it, right? It's mostly because of his influence the influence on him. But us per se, like I have gone to King's Dominion for Halloween Haunt and stuff like that, and I may be wrong. I mean, it may be something I'm doing wrong. It's never been something that affected me as I got older. It's just like I said, I like horror movies, and me and my wife will enjoy a scary movie once in a while. Now, I don't know if I'm wrong. I don't feel bad about watching a scary movie, and that's why I'm like, if that's not bad, then why is, it's almost one of those things where it's like I have to like balance everything, think pros and cons on everything, and it's difficult because I am part of a community that sees everything as demons. So it makes it very hard to know where it's like, am I really going wrong, or am I being overly religious, or like how are my morals? Like, how do I feel about it? How am I feeling like I am sinning? Because to be honest, 100%, I've been curious about it. I was like, hey, I would have loved to have gone to like as an adult to like a party with my friends or something like that. But obviously, then you start getting into other areas. But it's one of those things where I'm like, okay, like if I took apart what my parents taught me and that fear they integrated in me, would it be bad in general? Now, I don't have an answer. Like I'm being 100%. I never really had a discussion with adults to do this, but me and my wife have talked about it a few times. We have decided not to celebrate Halloween or anything like that. But it's one of those things where it's like, well, we almost need more basis of like, is there like Bible that will also talk about it? I mean, of course, it's a pagan holiday, but we also celebrate Valentine's Day. It's about Cupid, and that's the pagan god. So it's like Easter. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole lot of holidays where there's still a very primarily pagan
Secular
issue, but then we still celebrate it. And just because it seems something like if Halloween was about, like he said, dressing up as ketchup bottles and mustard, would it be okay? Like that's where I'm like, I'm at a debate about it, because if we took away the skeletons on all that stuff that we would associate with demonology or whatever the case may be, does that mean that it would be okay? Like,
well, it's also it comes down to the day that it represents, the reputation of the day. You know what I mean? If you're gonna do it on a different day where it's not that, but you're coming down to the day at night, where multiple things can happen to you. I get it as a teenager / adult going to your party with the friends, but I mean, what are you really going to go out there and see at that time of night? You're going to see slutty nurses or slutty cops. You know what I mean? You're not really good sinning. You're not really in the good Christian mindset at that point. So you have to think about what act are you doing? Is it Christ-like? And also, if Jesus was next to you, would you take him to these parties? Kind of like that type of deal.
No, yeah, of course. No, what I'm saying is more like I think we're focusing on the day itself too much. I think there are more aspects of it that I would be more comfortable with saying, oh, that makes sense. Because like let's go to a country that doesn't celebrate Halloween. And if we put costumes on that day in that country that doesn't wear Halloween, does that make it okay? Like at that point, it's like there's
at that point that's not Halloween. Then
they do have a what is it, a holiday in Mexico, El Dia del Muerto, and when they
El
go
Muerto. El Salvador too.
Yeah. Well, see, I don't even know because I came here very little, but like they put food out for the dead people. Like really,
So you got it. It's all about the days of what's the representation.
Like, give me the food or donate it somewhere to people that need it, but they're letting the food in cemeteries. I mean, I just like, to me, this stuff just goes like it's to another level. But I see what you're saying, Fafi, because if you take away certain things, what makes it bad? Like it makes you kind of doubt it. So I get your point.
But at that point, if you start taking away certain things, it is not necessarily considered Halloween at that point. So then at that point, it wouldn't be bad. You know what I mean? But you have to take it as a whole of what it is, because this is not something you nitpick. You take it as what it is. This is a day, a night of where, it has a lot of representation around demonic energy. You know what I mean? It has that stuff. And like I tell the kids all the time, it's like, this country's weird how you go from, demons and goblins to being thankful, and then Christian in a span of 3 months.
That's true.
So it's like, that's why I tell my kids, I was like, look, Halloween is this, Thanksgiving is this, Christmas is this, Easter is, the Passover. It's not a bunny. You know what I mean? It's all about what you're teaching and what you're growing into. And also, guys, do your own research. Look up what this stuff, because like Rafi said, the Bible doesn't really talk about holidays. It talks about days of what is implemented for Christ. You get what I mean? So do your own research, do your own homework, and say, you know what, I'm going to stay away, because in the whole aspect of everything of Halloween, it's not Christ-like. It's not what Christ represents.
Yep.
I don't know. I think that it's debatable, because I can tell you the same thing about Valentine's Day. Valentine's doesn't have to do with love. It's just love, and slowly it's coming into.
Well, we don't celebrate Valentine's Day.
No, but I'm saying,
I love my wife. You know
most Christians will, just like anything else. I mean, I feel like we pick certain holidays and then we celebrate it.
Or birthdays, for that matter.
Birthdays, yeah.
I don't know. It's not that I'm going against it being wrong, because I feel like morally and ethically, maybe like me and my wife probably agree that we know it's for some reason it's bad. I would just like
Rafi just hasn't pointed his finger at.
Yeah, I haven't put.
But I mean, here's the thing. If there's a tug, you know what I mean? If there's a doubt, if there's a tug, if there's a signal of like maybe then obviously just my man.
No, right. Well, I think that
I agree.
What he's agreeing is just that he wants to know why. He wants to be able to consistently explain why, not just because it's a pagan holiday, because again, we celebrate other things that used to be pagan holidays. So he wants something that makes more logical sense, I think.
Yeah, because I mean, like I've told you guys, one of the teachings was most teenagers will push the limit to how much bad I can do without getting in trouble. Now that's kind of what I'm picturing Halloween being. How far can you push that envelope without technically being in sin? But I would love, because everything that you guys talk about, I can reflect it to other areas in life or other holidays. So I haven't found one to make it Halloween the one holiday that is unacceptable compared to everything else, apart from being the scary things, like the demonic stuff and all that stuff. But then again, Christians still watch scary movies. I mean, I hear Christians all the time talking about how they watch scary movies and blah, blah, blah. Now, not everybody here, but what I'm saying is it's one of those things where being scared isn't something bad per se. But it's one of those things where I would love to be like, this is exactly why. It's like, oh, okay. Then I may never get that answer. I'm just someone who thinks a little too much about certain subjects.
Jonathan, you wanted to say something?
I do, because I am against Halloween.
Is it cultural?
I think, yeah, definitely. I think that is definitely cultural. But I also think in my, with my own little brain, right? Um, I just think that it's associated with things that the Christian faith does not believe or celebrate or see things as, worth celebrating for. And because of that, as a representative of Christ, I refuse to be part of that specific celebration and representation. That's why, like the Day of the Dead, Dia de los Muertos in El Salvador, I remember in my own town, the belief, at least in my own town, was that you will bring flowers and food. You don't leave them outside like in Mexico. You will go to the cemetery and go and spend a day with the dead at the cemetery. And there are people selling you food, and you bring flowers, you paint their little houses, their crosses, you put water, like because the concept is you are doing this to spend time with the people who are dead, which goes against what the Christian religion teaches. And because I'm a follower of that belief, um, I refuse to be part of it. And I think that, yes, I agree with you, Lisa. I'll go to a fall festival, a harvest thing. I'll go to a pumpkin patch, and I'll go to a corn maze. I'll eat pumpkin pie all day. But when it comes to that day of the holiday that it represents, in my little town, there were people that would go missing. Like I remember growing up, knowing that one little baby from my little colonia got missing on that day because she was used to be sacrificed because of the witches there. Like I live in a very highly, you know, witchcraft kind of town in El Salvador, in Huachapan. So that day is a day that you want to. You guys asked a little bit about how to share the gospel. Maybe this is another opportunity. Why don't you celebrate Halloween? Let me tell you why I personally don't celebrate Halloween. Let me pull
Hey,
my camera right here. See, because
a resume.
we're
And the
different,
cover
man.
page.
We are Christ followers. We do the things that Christ likes and celebrates, and that's why. So that's why I'm against.
Well said, Jonathan. Well said, man.
Rafi, I wanted to say something. I know you mentioned other holidays, but I think what maybe you could distinguish it differently, and this is just my opinion, I would say is with Halloween, I believe that you could maybe stay a straight path if you take away the demons and all that stuff, but then there's also the way to stray away from it. If from being a princess, you become an exotic nurse or somewhat, let's say. And with the other holidays like Valentine's or like Christmas, I think like people usually get happy those days. Well, with Valentine's, sometimes people get sad because they don't have their a loved one. But like with Christmas or like Thanksgiving, a lot of people get giving or, very, I guess, a positive way. Like most of those holidays end up being, and for Easter, for God's sakes, everybody dresses up and decides to come to church. So, it's just.
It feels like, the problem is the humans, most definitely. It's not the holiday itself. We corrupt everything. That's just our problem. But it's one of those, you can make Valentine's very corrupt if you ask me. So like, it's one of those things where I'm telling you, it's the human itself, I'm sure, is the biggest issue in the whole aspect of it. It's just one of those things where I've always like questioned it. I said I agree with everything you guys are saying. I wish there was a better answer, almost like. And there's a lot of times where there's things that you just stray away from that you wish had better answers, and you just don't, and you just stay away from it. Like as teenagers, if your parents say no, it's no, and then you become an adult, you can make your own decisions, and you can ask God when you get there, and if you rolled the roulette, that was up to you. But with us, it's like with our kid, I'm happy to take him to the pumpkin patch, and to give him a pumpkin, I'll carve a car on it or something. I want him to also enjoy holidays. I don't want him to think that it's okay to celebrate demons or people that are dead or anything like that. Of course not. And that's why I'm very careful. Me and my wife talk about it all the time with every celebration we do, just because we want to be careful with those things, because kids are easily influenced. Some kids are influenced more than others. But I just wish there was a better answer, to be honest with that. That's it. I've always fetched for a better answer. I have yet to get it, but yeah.
Maybe I grew up different than everybody else, but like I didn't grow up a Christian, so we did do Actually, we didn't do holidays. My parents let me go out for Halloween, and
I was a
must have
clown.
been, huh?
I was a clown once.
Yeah, and I maybe was a strange kid, but I didn't like it that much. I stopped like my teen years because the aspect of free candy, that was the main point, but you still have to work for it. You gotta go knock how many doors, like Susana, so when they open that door and they don't give you candy, that hurts as a kid,
That's like this. Turn off the lights.
So you gotta go to
You
the
don't have
next
to be
part.
like that.
I walked all the way here.
Yeah, and I was little. My mom
And
didn't
my
let me
lights are gonna be
go
off.
to around the neighborhood too much. So,
This man said, I walked 3 blocks.
yeah, and
Ain't
that
got
costume is
nothing.
hot, you know what I'm saying? So I ended it quick. So I was like, this is for kids. This is dumb. So
I got depressed.
so,
Speaking of depression,
Randall, was it weird when you became a Christian? I mean, did your parents tell you you can't celebrate Halloween anymore or anything like that?
actually, no, I'm older. I was like around my late 20s when I became a Christian, and
Okay.
this church really didn't mention Halloween that much. So at that beginning, you know what I'm saying? So, and they did things for kids and stuff like that. And later on, I don't know, yeah, I was like, Halloween is evil. So, things for kids. Well, I'm older. I don't care. So I'm not going out there.
You don't have to go knock at doors. You could just go buy your own candy.
Yeah, and
But I do have to say, for the teenagers that are curious about Halloween, my personal opinion, I don't agree with it. It is not a day of, like Jonathan said, and he said, well said, you're a follower of Christ. So it wouldn't
what I
be
have to say
Christ.
to the teens is you're going to do whatever your parents tell you to do because you're not old enough to make that decision. So if your parents say no, it's no. If your parents say it's okay, then it's okay. But otherwise, you are not allowed to make that decision. We're having this conversation so you can get another perspective. But at the end of the day, you're going to do what your parents say.
Maybe dress up as a character in the Bible and make that your challenge. Okay.
Yeah.
But does that make it okay?
Wear that to school.
See,
Wear that
I'm
to school.
just kidding.
yeah, I agree with Jose that they dress up who they want to be. So kind of like that movie Purge or something like that.
Yeah.
Like that one year you get to be evil and get away with it, So that movie's more extreme, but like you always forget the trick part. Teenagers always don't never went for the treat, but they won't like going to people's house, destroying and stuff like that. So, they thought they could get away at that time. So, Jose's right about that.
Yeah, we won't. Yeah, my kids probably will never celebrate it. I will probably let them dress up as something here in the house. Like my daughter could be a butterfly, and my son could be like, I don't know,
Transformer.
Not a
donkey.
turtle, because that's a hot costume. I was sweating a lot.
But we won't participate as far as like in the community to go out and do that. No, that's not something. But again, that's maybe like my husband might say no, we're not doing that ever, and then it's a no. So I'm just throwing things out there, but at the end of the day, you guys are all not old enough to make that decision on your own, so it's whatever your parents say. And if you want to be a rebel, then dress as Moses to school. See if you actually really really want to dress up on that day and represent Christ. Dress up as somebody
And
from
also,
the Bible.
you're teenagers. You have a mind. So, like, if your parents say, I don't care, but then you feel guilty, don't do it.
Yeah.
Like, think about it. Like, just don't do it. I mean, I was an adult for a long time. I could do whatever I want, but it's still in the back of your head. It's like, no, it's wrong. So don't do it.
That's that tug.
Yeah. And then honestly, that's where your parents come into play. Your parents dig things into your head that might save you. Like, it may not even have logical sense. Like, I still don't know why, but I feel bad doing it. So there was some benefit to it,
That's
and
true.
another thing, it's not worth it. Knowing you getting free candy, they also buy the cheap bad candies, like the candy corn and stuff like that. It's not worth it. It's not worth it.
This dude is scarred, man.
Cavities.
Candy. Waste your money, buy that good Reese's stuff, that good stuff.
Sammy, you haven't said anything.
He dresses up as pest control guy.
Stuff like that every day of the year that I'm working.
He's like, on Halloween, I dress like a normal person.
Recently, they gave us beekeeper suits, so I can dress like that if we have something that day.
I've actually like.
I like.
Go ahead.
Let him talk. He hasn't
You
talked.
know, I've been on both perspectives. You guys know my cousin Evelyn, right? So before we went to church or were Christians, our parents would allow us to go like trick or treating. Our parents were there with us, so I got to experience that, and it was fun in those days. You know, a bunch of candy, like 10 pounds of candy.
It
But
was the good candy, like the Spencer stuff, like the Primo candy.
oh yeah, good stuff.
All right, I'm just saying. You had a better childhood.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't. I think it's one of those things that the way I see things now as an adult, I see them is it like you know that whole thing that Julissa was saying about the meat, about Paul saying about the meat. Is it really going to benefit me, you know, or my family if we spend time together doing that? And that's something I try to put my life into in every aspect, even with movies or watching TV. Or for example, you know, I have certain family members, they're not Christian and they drink. Um, but then I have family members, you know, that are Christian, and I try to put my life into its perspective of every little insignificant thing, whether it's doing laundry, going out to the store. How am I representing Christ? Is this, you know, whatever I'm doing, is it really going to benefit Christ? Is it going to work towards the kingdom of God? And that's how I can say, you know, you got to put your life into that perspective, or that's my recommendation that you should do. And then in regards to it being a pagan holiday, there's a pastor. His name is Chuyo Olivares. He actually does a you know preaching just about Christmas, because apparently in Mexico or the part of Mexico he's in, they were like super against you know the Christmas tree, because it does, you know, believe it or not, it does have pagan origins.
Pagan, yep.
But
Pagan
then he
origin.
also starts bringing in his preaching. He's like, okay, so you guys have a problem with that? Okay, cool. He's like, so in el trabajo, ustedes saben, you guys know, like when you get a bonus or something. He started saying, don't get a bonus because guess what? It has a pagan origin. He's like, and the biggest one is all you guys here that are wearing ties. He was saying this during the service. He's like, you guys are sinning already because the tie, believe it or not, it has pagan origins. Vacation. There's so many things, and I was just thinking, I'm like, dang, we can't even say the days of the week because the week were dedicated to the planets, which the Romans, if you didn't know, now you know, were dedicated to a different god. So every day of the week, Monday in Spanish, it makes more sense. Lunes, Luna, Tuesday, Martes, Mars. So each day of the week was for a different god. But despite that, you know, I think we can still take that and use it, you know, for the glory of God. Sorry, I took too long.
Dang, Sammy, you brought some good stuff. You were over there quiet.
Is that your
every
new
day is
YouTube
Sunday,
page, Sammy? Is that the name of your new YouTube page? You didn't know, now you know. Like
No,
now you know.
It should be.
I got a quick question for everybody. All right, so some of you guys have kids, some of you guys don't, but it's okay. Would you send your kids to school on Halloween?
Sure.
You send them on Halloween, even with everybody else doing the whole dress up thing and the influence.
Yeah, I send them to school.
Yep.
They ain't dressing up, but I send them
Well,
to school.
I'm gonna homeschool my kids, so I ain't sending them to school for nothing. But if they were in public school, I would send them to school.
I think at the same time, it's good for them to have that exposure.
Yeah, to not be blind about it.
Because you can't keep your kids in a bubble just because we don't celebrate it and other people celebrate it. I don't teach my kids that, okay, you know, judge them. It's, you know, everybody has their way of parenting, and some parents are going to allow certain things. And like I tell my kids, you guys are different just because this is what we do in this house. You guys aren't going to do what the other kids are doing at school. So I think it's good for them to go to school because they don't dress up, nor do they wear any Halloween shirt. And like I said, Isaac's what now, 15?
He's 15.
He's been okay, and Adrian's 10, and it's never been an issue.
And like I always tell my boys all the time, I tell them, you know, I show them. I don't make them blind to the world. I show them this is what's going on. Let's not be blind about it. But remember, you're a Christian first. You're my son second, and you represent my family. You represent the name. You represent my family. And my teachings of how I raise you here at the house. That's the two rules that I send them out to the world with. But first and foremost, you're a follower of Christ.
Well said. All right, guys. We kind of went a little over, just a little bit. So
Next
we're
question.
gonna go ahead and
Next question.
no, but I guess Rafi.
Those are good questions, though.
No, these were good conversations. I enjoyed them. I love listening to different perspectives because it really like a lot of times you don't think about everything. So other people could think of other things that you're like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. Oh yeah, I didn't think about that. So it's
like
always
when
good.
when school has a pep rally, they want you to wear the school colors and paint in your face. I never did it, you know.
The
I never
pep rally.
cared.
I avoid all the pep rallies in my school. I always end up hiding from them. But that's just because I still struggle with liking being around other adults. Anyway, that's going to be the end. All right, guys. Thank you for listening in, everybody. We appreciate everyone all 6 of you who were listening. We appreciate you. Remember, your parents' rules go over anything we say here. So our opinions don't matter because it's whatever your parents say. They only matter for knowledge, and that's it. Anything your parents say goes. Obedience to your parents is more important than celebrating anything. And that's actually going to be more important to Christ as well. So listen to your parents. Be obedient to them. Respect them and honor them. So let's go ahead and end now. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm going to put the ending there. This time I'm probably going to do it right. Let's hope so. And you guys
Jonathan, good seeing you, brother. Miss you, man.
Es un placer. Pórtense bien que nada les cuesta, como dice mi abuelita, ¿ok?